Rejected by her children, she decided to enter the crater. But what she found down there, Dorothy held tight to her wooden cane as she walked toward the ancient fissure that cut through the center of White Rock, a small town in the interior of Alabama. At 72, she carried in her cloth bag only a few documents, a faded photograph, and the last words she heard from her 3 children echoing in her mind like a sentence. 2 hours earlier, seated at the dining table she had bought with her own savings as a seamstress, Dorothy listened to Richard, her eldest son, speak the words that broke her heart. The 3 siblings had gathered without warning her, and now they were there, more serious than ever, talking about her life as if she weren't present. "Mum, you can't live alone anymore. There have been too many memory lapses, too many falls, too many scares," said Richard, avoiding looking directly at her. Jennifer, the middle child, added with a voice that tried to sound caring, but which Dorothy recognized as false. "It's for your own good, Mom. We found a very nice retirement home in Atlanta. You'll have medical care, activities." The youngest, Stephen, fidgeted nervously with his car keys. "It's temporary, Mom, until we get better organized." Dorothy knew her children too well to believe that last lie. She knew Stephen was building a pool at his new house, that Jennifer had just bought an imported car, and that Richard was planning a trip to Europe. There was no room for an elderly mother in these golden plans. "You've already decided everything, haven't you?" she asked, feeling her hands tremble not from old age but from a rage she hadn't felt in decades. "Mom, don't be like that. The retirement home is very nice. It has a garden, other people your age. Other people their children don't want anymore." Dorothy finished, rising from the table. "I understand." Richard sighed as if she were a difficult child. "You're being dramatic. It's the best decision for everyone." Dorothy looked at each of her children, searching for traces of the kids she had raised alone after her husband abandoned them 40 years ago. She found nothing but well-dressed strangers who seemed anxious to get rid of a problem. "All right," she said, surprising them with the calm in her voice. "But give me an hour to say goodbye to the house." The 3 exchanged glances, relieved by the lack of resistance. "Of course, Mum. We'll be back soon to get your things," said Jennifer, already heading for the door. When she was alone, Dorothy didn't cry. She took the bag, put in the documents, the wedding photo, and a small amount of cash she kept hidden in a drawer lining. It wasn't much, but she had saved it penny by penny over the years, dreaming of taking a trip to see the ocean. Now that money would serve another purpose. She left the house for the last time without looking back. Her steps naturally led her to the town center, where the ancient crater had always sparked her curiosity. They said it had been caused by a stone that fell from the sky many years ago, even before she was born. The dark, deep fissure was always surrounded by a small wooden fence and warning signs that no one read anymore. Dorothy stopped at the edge of the crater, looking into the depths that were lost in darkness. The limestone edges were marked by time and rain, creating small natural steps that descended along the steep wall. She mentally calculated what she was about to do. If her children no longer wanted to worry about her, then she would solve the problem for good. But when she began to descend the first few meters, carefully leaning on her cane and the irregularities of the rock, she heard something that made her stop. It was a weak voice, almost a whisper, coming from somewhere down below. "Help! Is someone up there?" Dorothy looked down, trying to see something beyond the shadows. "Who's there?" she shouted. My name is Walter. I fell here 2 days ago. I think I broke my leg. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Dorothy felt something stir inside her, an instinct she thought she had lost. Without hesitation, she began to descend more carefully, using her cane to test each foothold before putting her weight on it. The descent was dangerous, but she had spent her entire life caring for others, and she wasn't going to stop now. "Hold on. I'm coming down," she shouted below. "Ma'am? No, it's too dangerous. Call someone younger," replied Walter, his voice choked. "Young man, if there were any younger person willing to help, you wouldn't have been down there for 2 days," Dorothy retorted, continuing her descent. It took her nearly 20 minutes to reach the bottom of the crater, where she found Walter lying near a small puddle of water that had formed in the center. He was a man of about 50, with dirty clothes and a face marked by pain and despair. His left leg was visibly broken, swollen, and badly positioned. "How did you end up here, son?" asked Dorothy, kneeling beside him. Walter tried to smile, but the pain wouldn't let him. "I was trying to get my grandson's kite. The wind brought it here, and I thought I could climb down just a little bit. The rope I brought snapped." "And your family? Aren't they looking for you?" Walter's silence was more eloquent than any answer. Dorothy immediately understood that she wasn't the only one there who had been abandoned by her own children. "They don't know I left home," he finally admitted. "After I closed the shop and couldn't pay the bills anymore, my son said I was just dead weight. Said it was better if I disappeared for good." Dorothy felt a painful identification with those words. She examined his leg carefully, remembering the times she used to bandage her children and neighbors when she was young. "The leg is broken, but it's not a compound fracture. It might hurt a lot, but you're not going to lose it," she said, trying to sound optimistic. "Are you hungry?" "Very. I've only drunk from this water here." He pointed to the small puddle. Dorothy opened her bag and took out a piece of bread left over from breakfast and a small bottle of water. "Eat slowly," she instructed, breaking the bread into pieces. "I need to think about how we're going to get out of here." While Walter ate, Dorothy examined the place where they had fallen. The crater was deeper than she had imagined, and the walls were too steep for a safe climb, especially with an injured man. But her practical mind, used to solving problems alone, was already working on possibilities. "Walter, do you know about ropes and knots?" she asked. "A little. I worked for 40 years as a mechanic. I handle steel cables, things like that." "Then you can teach me, because I'm going to need to climb up to get help and materials." "Ma'am, you can't climb alone. It's too dangerous." Dorothy laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Young man, what do you think is more dangerous? Climbing this crater or going back to a life where my own children threw me away like old trash?" Walter fell silent, understanding that they were both there for the same reason. They had nothing left to lose. "All right," he agreed, "but promise you'll be careful." Dorothy spent the rest of the day studying the best route to climb. Walter, despite the pain, helped by identifying the firmest rocks and the best footholds. When night fell, she improvised a bed with dry leaves the wind had accumulated on one edge of the crater. "I'll climb up first thing in the morning," she said, lying down next to Walter to share warmth. "And I'll bring what we need to get you out of here." During the early morning, Walter had a fever because of the infection that was starting to form in his leg. Dorothy spent hours applying cold water compresses to his forehead and talking to keep him awake. It was in those quiet hours that the two began to share their stories. Walter told her about the workshop he inherited from his father and how he fought to keep it running, even when new cars started needing special parts he couldn't buy. He spoke about his 8-year-old grandson, who was his only joy, but whom he could barely see because his daughter-in-law forbade him from visiting. Dorothy talked about the years raising 3 children alone, working days as a seamstress and nights as a cleaner to pay for private school for them. She told how she saved every penny so they could study and have a better life than hers, and how now that they were all successful, she had become just an inconvenience. "You know what's the saddest part?" she said, looking at the stars appearing through the opening of the crater. "It's that we spent our whole lives taking care of other people, and now that we need care, there's no one left." "You're left for me," whispered Walter, "and I for you." When the sun rose, Dorothy prepared for the climb. Walter had improved a bit during the night, but he was still very weak. She sharpened one end of the cane on a rough stone and used the belt to tie the bag to her back. The climb was even harder than the descent. Several times she had to stop to catch her breath, and once she almost slipped when a stone came loose. But her determination to help Walter kept her steady. It wasn't just about saving him. It was about proving to herself that she was still useful, that she still had value. When she finally reached the surface, the sun was already high. Dorothy looked around the town square, which was empty except for a few street vendors setting up their stalls. She needed a rope, first aid supplies, and food. But first, she needed someone to believe her story. She went to Mr. Anthony's pharmacy, a man she had known since her youth and who had always treated her with respect. "Dorothy," he exclaimed when he saw her enter with dirty, torn clothes. "What happened to you?" "Mr. Anthony, I need your help, and I don't have time for long explanations. There's an injured man at the bottom of the crater in the square. I need bandages, infection ointment, painkillers, and a strong rope." Mr. Anthony looked at her with concern. "Dorothy, are you sure you didn't hit your head? What's this story about a man in the crater?" "I went down there and found him. He's had a broken leg for 2 days. If we don't do something soon, he could have serious complications." "You went down into the crater? Dorothy, that's crazy. And where are your children? Do they know where you are?" Dorothy took a deep breath. She had no time for pride. "My children put me in a nursing home this morning, or at least they tried. But I found this man needing help, and I'm not going to abandon him like I was abandoned." Mr. Anthony studied her face for a long moment. He had known Dorothy for decades and knew she wasn't one to make up stories. "All right, I'll give you what you need. But I'm also going to call the town's volunteer firefighter to help." "No," said Dorothy quickly. "Not yet. First, let me go down with the medicine and take care of him. Then we can think about the rescue." "Why, Dorothy?" She hesitated, trying to find words to explain something she barely understood herself. "Because for the first time in months I feel useful, I feel needed, and I don't want that to end yet." Mr. Anthony sighed, but began to gather the materials she asked for. "You've always been stubborn, Dorothy, since you were a girl. I hope you know what you're doing." With a small backpack borrowed from her Anthony, Dorothy returned to the crater carrying medicine, bandages, a used climbing rope he had kept from more adventurous times, and enough food for 2 days. The descent was easier now that she knew the way. Walter greeted her with a relieved smile. "I thought maybe you had changed your mind," he said. "I have never changed my mind about anything important in my life. I'm not going to start now," she replied, opening the backpack. "Now let's take proper care of that leg." Dorothy cleaned the wound carefully and applied the antibiotic ointment. Walter groaned in pain, but did not complain. She immobilized the leg using straight branches she found, and the bandages, remembering techniques she had learned decades ago in a first aid course. "Are you a nurse?" asked Walter, impressed with her skill. "A seamstress. But when you raise 3 children alone, you learn a little of everything. Nurse, teacher, mechanic, psychologist, and a cook too," he asked, watching her open the lunch containers her Anthony had prepared. "That one I made myself. I took it to the pharmacist as a thank you for the medicine." They ate in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their thoughts. The medicine had eased Walter's pain, and he could concentrate better. "Dorothy, may I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why didn't you just go up and call the fire department right away? Why are you down here with me?" Dorothy stopped eating and looked at him. "Because up there I'm just an old woman getting in the way of my children's lives. Down here I am someone you need. It's been a long time since anyone really needed me." Walter nodded, understanding perfectly. "Your children are ungrateful, Dorothy. You raised them alone. You must have sacrificed a lot." "Too much," she admitted. "But I don't regret it. What I regret is not having saved anything for myself. I always thought that when I got old they would repay me in some way. How silly. What are you going to do when we get out of here?" Dorothy thought about the question as she organized the medicine. "I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't know what will happen to me tomorrow. It's frightening, but it's also kind of liberating." "I know what I'm going to do," said Walter. "I'm going to apologize to my grandson. I'm going to explain that his grandfather is not a failure. He just had some problems. And I'm going to teach him how to fly a kite properly so he doesn't have to go down into dangerous craters anymore." Dorothy laughed. "Good idea. And maybe I'll learn too. I've never flown a kite in my life." "Really? You missed out on one of the best things about childhood." "I missed a lot. I married young, got pregnant young, was widowed young. But I don't complain. Every choice I made brought me here." Walter watched her for a few moments. "You have a strength I wish I had." "You have that strength, Walter. Otherwise you wouldn't have lasted 2 days down here alone. Otherwise you wouldn't have tried to get your grandson's kite even knowing the risk." When night fell again, the two were more comfortable with each other. Walter had made a small fire using dry twigs and matches Dorothy brought, and they warmed themselves as they talked about their lives. "You know, Dorothy, I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "When we get out of here, what if we don't go back to the lives we had before? What if we invent a new life?" Dorothy looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I have a little house on the outskirts of the city. 2 rooms, a backyard. It's a bit messy because I'm no good around the house, but there's room for 2 people. You could stay there, help me get things organized, and I would help you with whatever you needed. Walter, you don't even really know me. I know enough. I know you're courageous, generous, and you don't give up on people. I know you have skillful hands and a good heart. That's already more than I know about anyone else in my life." Dorothy fell silent, considering the proposal. The idea of not going back home, of not having to face her children, and the humiliation of the nursing home was tempting, but it was also frightening. And if it doesn't work out, what if we don't get used to each other? Then we try something else. But at least we try together, instead of giving up alone. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious in my life." Dorothy extended her hand to him. "Then it's a deal. But first, let's get out of here." On the 3rd day, Walter was much better. The infection had subsided with the antibiotics, and he could move a little, leaning on Dorothy. They began planning the climb together. "The rope you brought is good, but it's not long enough to pull me all the way up," Walter analyzed. "We'll need to do this in stages." "How so?" "You climb up first and tie the rope to one of the trees in the square. Then come back down to the middle of the crater and help me climb up to there. Then we repeat the process until we reach the top." It was a risky plan, but it was all they had. Dorothy climbed first, more easily now that she knew every stone and every foothold. When she reached the top, she secured the rope to a sturdy tree and tested it several times to make sure it would hold the weight of both of them. The first stage went well. Walter, despite the pain, managed to hoist himself up to a small natural plateau halfway up the crater, but that's when they encountered a problem. Some people had gathered in the square and were watching the strange activity. "Mrs. Dorothy," shouted a familiar voice, "what are you doing down there?" It was Betty, a gossipy neighbor who always knew about everyone's life. "I'm helping an injured man," replied Dorothy, trying not to lose her concentration. "What injured man? Where is he?" "Down here," Walter spoke up, waving from the ledge where he was. Betty ran to get more people, and within minutes a small crowd had gathered around the crater. Among them, to Dorothy's despair, were her 3 children. "Mother!" shouted Richard. "What on earth are you doing down there?" "Saving a life," she replied without stopping her work with the rope. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Jennifer seemed on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Get out of there right now!" "I'm not leaving without Walter." Stephen tried a different approach. "Mom, let us call the fire department. You've done your part. Now let the professionals take over." "We don't need the fire department," said Dorothy. "We're managing to climb up on our own." "No, you're not," said a new voice. It was Sergeant Jack, the town's volunteer firefighter. "Mrs. Dorothy, I admire your courage, but this has become a rescue operation. I'm going to have to ask you to climb up and let me take over." Dorothy looked at Walter, who was listening to the whole conversation. "Go on, Dorothy," he said. "You've already saved me. Now let them finish the job." With a heavy heart, Dorothy climbed the last few meters and found herself surrounded by a crowd of worried and curious faces. Her children immediately approached. "Mother, we've been looking for you since yesterday," said Richard. "You disappeared just when we were going to pick up your things. We were desperate." "Desperate?" Dorothy stared at them. "You were desperate at the possibility that I might have solved the problem you wanted to outsource all by myself." "Don't talk like that, Mom," pleaded Jennifer. "We were genuinely worried." "Worried about what?" "About the possibility of having to cancel your plans to look for me." Sergeant Jack interrupted the family discussion. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need you to tell me exactly what happened here, how you found this man, how long he's been down there, what condition he was in when you found him." Dorothy told the whole story, omitting only the part about her initial attempt to do something drastic. Jack listened to her attentively, asking technical questions about Walter's injuries and the care she had provided. "You saved his life," said the firefighter when she finished. 2 more days down there, and he could have had serious complications. And the bandage you did on his leg is perfect. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Richard pulled Dorothy aside while the firefighter organized the final rescue of Walter. Mum, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Richard. You've made it perfectly clear what you think of me. We were wrong, admitted Jennifer, approaching. Seeing you here, what you did, we realized we may have made a hasty decision. May have? Dorothy laughed humorlessly. You decided to put me in a home because you think I'm not good for anything anymore. And now that you've seen I'm still capable of saving a life, you want to change your minds. Stephen, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. Mom, we were worried about your safety. With the forgetfulness, the falls. What forgetfulness, Stephen? What falls? I tripped once on the bathroom rug, and you turned that into evidence of senility. And that time you forgot the stove on. That was once. Once in 72 years of life. Have you never forgotten anything? Jennifer tried to touch her mother's arm, but Dorothy pulled away. Mum, maybe we overreacted. Maybe the nursing home isn't necessary yet. Yet? Dorothy shook her head. You don't understand anything. It's not about necessity. It's about respect. It's about recognizing that I still have value, that I still have things to contribute. At that moment, Walter was brought up on an improvised stretcher by the volunteer firefighters. Despite the pain, he smiled upon seeing Dorothy. Thank you, he said, extending his hand to her. You literally saved me. We saved each other, replied Dorothy, squeezing his hand. Sergeant Jack approached Dorothy's children. You should be very proud of your mother. What she did here was heroic. I don't know many people of any age who would have the courage to go down into that crater to help a stranger. Richard, Jennifer, and Stephen fell silent, clearly embarrassed. We're taking Walter to the health clinic, said Jack. Mrs. Dorothy, do you want to come along? Since you've been caring for him these days, it would be good if you explained to the doctor what was done. Of course I'm going, Richard interrupted. Mum, after the clinic, you're coming home with me. We'll talk about all this. No, I'm not, Richard. What do you mean? I'm going to Walter's house. I'm going to help him with his recovery. Mom, you don't even know this man. I know him better than I know you. At least I know he values me. Walter, from the stretcher, tried to intervene. Dorothy, they are your family. I don't want to cause trouble. Walter, you're not causing any trouble. The trouble existed before I met you. Jennifer was visibly upset. Mom, you can't go live with a stranger. What will people think? They'll think the same thing they've always thought, that Dorothy is a woman who isn't afraid to work and to care for people. And for the first time in a long time, that's going to be true again. At the health clinic, while the doctor examined Walter, Dorothy spoke with the nurse about the care that would be needed during his recovery. The nurse was impressed with the practical knowledge Dorothy demonstrated. Do you have experience with medical care? Asked the nurse. I have experience with life, replied Dorothy. When you live 72 years, you learn a little bit of everything. Walter would need to stay immobilized for a few weeks, do physical therapy and take medication for the infection. The doctor was worried about who would care for him, since he had revealed he had no close family willing to help. I will take care of him, Dorothy said simply. Mom, Richard had entered the room. You can't make a decision like this without talking to us. Why? When you all decided to put me in that home, did you talk to me? The doctor looked uncomfortable at the family discussion. Look, I don't get involved in family matters, but I can say the patient will need constant care in the coming weeks. If you commit to caring for him, I'll authorize the discharge. I commit, Dorothy said firmly. Richard sighed, seeing he wouldn't be able to dissuade his mother. Then we'll help too, with money for medicine, food, things like that. I don't need your help, said Dorothy. I have my savings. Mom, please, let us help. It's the least we can do. Walter, who was listening to everything from the bed, spoke up. Dorothy, accept their help. Not for them, but for us. The recovery will be easier if we don't have to worry about money. Dorothy considered the proposal. All right, but let's make one thing clear. It's not charity. It's a contribution to the care of a person you also abandoned. Richard lowered his head, recognizing the truth in his mother's words. Walter's house was indeed small, but clean and well organized. It had a living room connected to a tiny kitchen, a small bedroom and a simple bathroom. The backyard was what caught Dorothy's attention the most. It had space for a vegetable garden and some fruit trees that had been neglected. "Is this where you're going to stay?" asked Jennifer, clearly disapproving. "This is where I'm going to live," corrected Dorothy. "For the first time in months, I'm going to really live, not just exist." Walter was settled in the bedroom, and Dorothy improvised a bed in the living room with mattresses Richard brought. In the first days, she dedicated herself entirely to his care: medication on time, physical therapy exercises, dressing changes, proper meals. But she also began to care for the house. She organized the kitchen, cleaned every corner, mended torn clothes Walter had let pile up. In the backyard, she started planting a small garden with seeds she bought with her savings. "Dorothy, you don't have to do all this," said Walter, watching her plant lettuce on a sunny afternoon. "I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. It's been a long time since I did anything because I wanted to." The children visited almost every day, always with excuses about checking if everything was okay. Dorothy knew they were trying to find reasons to criticize her decision, but they couldn't find any. She was clearly more animated, more active, and happier than she had been in months. "Mom, are you really okay here?" asked Stephen during a visit. "Better than I've been in a long time." "But don't you miss your house?" "That house became a museum of my loneliness, Stephen. Here I have a purpose again." Jennifer watched Dorothy prepare an herbal tea for Walter. "You seem like a different person," she commented. "I'm the same person. It's just that now I have someone who really needs me, and that makes all the difference." Richard, who had always been the most resistant to the situation, began to observe the dynamic between Dorothy and Walter more closely. He saw how she moved through the house with confidence, how she took care of the details, how she talked with Walter about future plans. There was an energy in his mother he hadn't seen in years. "Walter," said Richard one afternoon when Dorothy had gone out to buy medicine, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course. Are your intentions with my mother serious?" Walter laughed, despite the pain. "Your intentions with your mother are serious," he retorted. "What do you mean?" "Richard, your mother saved my life. She gave me a reason to live again. My intentions are as serious as they can be. To repay the care she is giving me, to value someone who deserves to be valued, and to build a true friendship with one of the bravest people I've ever met." Richard fell silent, processing the answer. "And you?" Walter continued. "What are your intentions? Because if it's to convince her to go back to that loneliness you all created for her, you can give up. She won't." "I just want what's best for my mother." "Then stop trying to control what's best for her and let her decide. She's lived 72 years and raised 3 children alone. I think she knows how to choose what's good for her life." By the 3rd week, Walter was already able to walk with crutches. Dorothy accompanied him to the backyard to show the progress of the garden. "Look here," she said, pointing to the first seedlings beginning to sprout. "In a few weeks, we'll have lettuce, tomatoes, bell peppers. And the medicinal herbs are growing well too." "You have a knack for everything," said Walter, admiring her work. "It's not a knack, it's a pleasure. I've always liked seeing things grow, develop. That's why I enjoyed raising my children so much." "And them? Are they accepting the situation better?" "They are. At least they've stopped insisting I come back home. I think they realized I won't change my mind." "And if they truly wanted you to come back? If they apologized, promised to treat you better?" Dorothy thought about the question while watering the plants. "You know, Walter, there are things in life you can't undo. When they decided I was a burden, something broke inside me. Even if they changed now, I couldn't forget how I felt that day." "But can you forgive?" "I can, and I do forgive. But forgiving doesn't mean going back to the same situation. It means accepting that they are human, that they made a mistake and moving forward." Walter steadied himself better on his crutches to look Dorothy in the eyes. "And moving forward means continuing here with me. It means building a new life the way we choose. If you want my company, I'll stay. If at any point you want me to leave, I'll go. No drama, no demands. I want your company, Dorothy, not just while I recover. I want us to be a chosen family, since the families we were born into disappointed us. Chosen family, repeated Dorothy, liking the expression. I'd never thought of it that way, but that's exactly it. That night, Walter managed to eat at the kitchen table for the first time since the accident. Dorothy had made a soup with vegetables from the garden and homemade bread she'd learned to make by watching videos on the internet. It's delicious, said Walter. It's been years since I've eaten food made with such care. Well, get used to it because I plan on cooking for us for a long time. Dorothy, can I ask a personal question? All your questions are personal, she laughed. Go ahead. Do you regret anything in life? Dorothy stopped eating and thought, I regret wasting so much time trying to please people who were never going to be satisfied. I regret not having saved more time for myself. Of not having traveled, not having dated after I was widowed, not having done things I wanted to just because I thought it wasn't appropriate for my age. And now? Do you plan to make up for lost time? I plan to enjoy the time I have left. And for the first time, I'm going to do it without asking anyone for permission. During the 4th week, Dorothy received an unexpected visit. It was Lucy, her 16-year-old granddaughter, who had always been her favorite, though she never admitted it openly. Grandma, can I talk to you? And I? Of course, my dear, sit here with me. Lucy looked around the little house with curiosity. Grandma, is it true that you saved a man's life in a crater? It's true. Why? Everyone at school is talking about it. They say you're a heroine. Dorothy laughed. Heroine is an exaggeration. I just did what any decent person would do. But Grandma, not everyone would have the courage to go down into a crater to help a stranger. Lucy, when you have nothing left to lose, you find courage you didn't even know you had. You had nothing left to lose? Dorothy looked at her granddaughter, deciding to be honest. That day, your parents and your uncles decided I should go to a nursing home. They said I was getting in the way of their lives. Lucy looked shocked. They really said that? They did. And you know what's worse? They thought they were doing what was best for me. Is that why you came to live here? I came because I found someone who values me, someone who understands that age isn't a synonym for uselessness. Lucy was silent for a few moments. Grandma, can I say something? Of course. I think my dad, my mom, and my uncles are idiots. Lucy? It's true, Grandma. You're the smartest and strongest person I know. If they can't see that, that's their problem. Dorothy felt her eyes fill with tears. Thank you, my love. Knowing that at least you understand means so much to me. Grandma, can I come visit you always? Whenever you want. This house will always have a place for you. Walter, who had been listening to the conversation from the living room, joined them in the kitchen. So you're the famous granddaughter, he said, smiling. Your grandmother talks about you all the time. And you're the man she saved, replied Lucy. You owe her a lot. I owe her my life, and I plan to spend the rest of it repaying her. Lucy liked Walter immediately. He had a gentle and respectful way about him, very different from what she imagined when her parents talked about the strange man Grandma was taking care of. Grandma, the house is looking beautiful, said Lucy, observing the improvements Dorothy had made. There's still a lot to do. Walter has many ideas for improving the backyard, and I want to expand the vegetable garden. Can I help? During school breaks. Dorothy and Walter looked at each other and smiled. Of course you can, said Walter. We can always use more willing hands. Lucy's visit brought a new energy to the house. She came back several times during the following weeks, always bringing joy and curiosity. She helped Dorothy plant new seedlings, learned to bake bread with her, and listened to Walter tell stories about his time as a mechanic. Grandma, you look 10 years younger, Lucy commented one afternoon. I feel 10 years younger. Sometimes I feel even younger than that. What changed? What changed is that now I wake up every day knowing I'm needed, that I have important things to do, that someone is counting on me. Lucy looked at Walter, who was fixing a broken faucet. And you're Walter. Has he changed too since you arrived? A lot. In the beginning he was as discouraged as I was. He thought his life was over. Now he's already making plans to reopen a small workshop right here in the backyard. Really? Really? He has so much knowledge to offer. He just needed someone who believed in him. Walter approached them, wiping his hands on a towel. "Talking about me?" he asked, smiling. "Talking about how you two saved each other," said Lucy. "That's true," Walter agreed. "Your grandmother saved me from the crater, but she also saved me from sadness, and I hope I'm doing the same for her." "You are," said Dorothy. "For the first time in a long time, I have plans for the future. Plans I chose for myself." Walter's recovery was practically complete by the end of the second month. He could already walk normally and had started taking on a few clients in the makeshift workshop he set up in the backyard. They were small jobs, but they brought him immense satisfaction. "Dorothy, I need to tell you something," he said one night after dinner. "Go ahead." "I'm in love with you." Dorothy stopped washing the dishes and turned to him. "Walter, let me finish. I know it might seem strange that we haven't known each other long, that we're not young anymore, but what I feel for you is real. It's true love, mature, based on admiration and companionship." Dorothy dried her hands on the dish towel and sat at the table with him. "I feel something special for you too, Walter, but I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of confusing gratitude with love, afraid of being naive like a lovesick teenager, afraid of ruining the good friendship we've built." Walter took her hand. "Dorothy, I'm 58. You're 72. We don't have time to be afraid of true feelings. If it's love, let's live that love. If it doesn't work out, at least we tried. And what if my children are scandalized? Your children will have to accept that you are a grown woman, free to make your own decisions about your love life. And what if people in town talk badly? They'll talk anyway. They're already talking about us living in the same house. At least now they'll have a real reason to gossip." Dorothy laughed, feeling her heart race like it hadn't in decades. "Walter, I accept dating you, but let's take it slow, okay? As slow as can be. We have the rest of our lives to discover what this love can become." Their first kiss happened 3 days later, while they were watering the vegetable garden together in the late afternoon. It was a gentle, tender kiss, full of promises and hope. Lucy was the first person to notice the change in their relationship. "Grandma, are you dating your Walter?" she asked directly. "Why do you ask?" "Because you two look like you're in love, and because he treats you in an even more special way than before." Dorothy decided to be honest with her granddaughter. "Yes, we are dating." "That's great," exclaimed Lucy. "He makes you happy, and that's what matters." "You don't think it's strange? A woman my age dating?" "Grandma, love has no age. If you found someone who truly loves you, you have to enjoy it." The reaction of Dorothy's children was less enthusiastic. Richard especially was troubled by the news. "Mum, are you sure you know what you're doing?" "Absolutely. But you barely know this man. What if he's taking advantage of you?" "Richard, I saved his life. If anyone is taking advantage of anyone here, it's me taking advantage of his gratitude." "Mum, that's not it. It's just what, Richard? You can't accept that I'm still a woman capable of feeling love and being loved?" Jennifer tried to be more diplomatic. "Mum, we just want to make sure you're being cautious. Relationships at your age can be complicated." "Relationships at any age can be complicated, Jennifer. The difference is that at my age, I know exactly what I want and what I won't tolerate." Stephen, who had always been more reserved, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Mom, are you two planning to get married?" Dorothy and Walter exchanged a look. "We don't know yet," Walter replied. "We've only been dating a week, but if it came to that, it would be our decision." "Does that mean if you got married, our mother wouldn't inherit her house?" asked Richard. "Richard," Dorothy scolded, "what kind of question is that?" "It's a practical question, Mom. We need to know how this affects the family's financial matters." Walter stood up from the table where they were talking. "Dorothy, I'll take a walk in the backyard so you all can talk as a family." When he left, Dorothy faced her 3 children. "You really want to talk about money? Let's talk. You're worried about an inheritance you don't even know will exist when I'm gone. But you didn't worry about valuing me while I'm alive. Mom, it's not about money, Jennifer lied. Yes, it is about money. You think Walter is with me for what? My fortune? I sewed my whole life, lived in a simple house, drove an old car. What fortune do you think I have? Richard lowered his head, embarrassed. We didn't mean to offend. You already have. Once again. First you decided I was incapable of taking care of myself. Now you've decided I'm incapable of judging a man's intentions. Stephen tried to calm the situation. Mom, we just want to protect you. Where were you when I needed protection from loneliness, from the feeling of uselessness, from the pain of feeling abandoned by my own children? The three fell silent. Walter protects me every day, Dorothy continued. He protects me from sadness, from the feeling that I'm not good for anything anymore, from the idea that my life is over. What do you want to protect me from? From happiness? Jennifer began to cry. Mom, we didn't want it to come to this. We were wrong, okay? We were wrong from the start. Yes, you were. And you're still wrong by trying to control my life instead of simply supporting me. Richard stood up and went to call Walter back. Walter, can you come back, please? When Walter returned, Richard addressed him directly. Walter, I need to apologize. The questions I asked were inappropriate and offensive. You don't need to apologize to me, Richard. You need to apologize to your mother. She's the most upright person I know, and she deserves to be treated with respect by her own children. Mom, I'm sorry, said Richard. We're trying to get used to all these changes. It's not about getting used to it, Richard. It's about respecting my choices, even when you don't understand them. Jennifer approached Dorothy. Mom, if you're happy with Walter, then we support you. That's what matters. That's what I wanted to hear from day one, said Dorothy. It wasn't so hard, was it? In the following months, the relationship between Dorothy and Walter deepened. They developed a pleasant routine. They woke up early to tend the garden, had breakfast together. Walter worked in the workshop while Dorothy took care of the house and garden. They had lunch together, rested during the hottest part of the afternoon, and spent their evenings talking or watching television while cuddling. Walter's workshop began to gain a reputation in town. He had an honest approach with customers, always explaining exactly what needed to be done and charging fair prices. Dorothy helped him with the administrative side, organizing the accounts and scheduling services. You know, Dorothy, I never thought I'd have a business partner at 58, Walter said one afternoon. And I never thought I'd learn to handle car parts at 72, she replied, cleaning a tool. We make a good team. The best team I've ever been a part of. Dorothy's children gradually came to accept the relationship. Richard still showed some resistance, but Jennifer and Stephen began including Walter in family events. Lucy had become a frequent visitor and had developed a genuine friendship with Walter, who taught her how to fix bicycles and other objects. Grandma, are you two going to get married? Lucy asked one afternoon. Why do you ask? Because you act like a married couple, and because everyone in town thinks you're already married. Dorothy and Walter looked at each other and laughed. Maybe one day, said Dorothy, but we're in no hurry. It's just that it would be nice to have a wedding in the family, said Lucy. And it would be even nicer if it was for people who truly love each other. Walter took Dorothy's hand. Lucy is right. Maybe it's time for us to make it official. Walter, are you proposing to me in front of my granddaughter? I am. Dorothy Santos, will you marry me? Dorothy looked at him, then at Lucy, whose eyes were shining with excitement, then back at him. I do, Walter Silva. I will marry you. The news of the engagement caused varied reactions in the family. Lucy was thrilled and offered to help with the preparations. Jennifer and Stephen were surprised, but supported the decision. Richard took longer to process the information. Mum, are you sure? He asked in a private conversation. I am, Richard. For the first time in a long time, I am absolutely sure about something. And what if it doesn't work out? And what if it does? Richard, I lived 40 years alone after your father left me. 40 years taking care of only you kids and myself. Now I've found someone who wants to share life with me. Even if it doesn't work out, at least I will have tried to be happy. Richard sighed. Then I support you, Mom. If this is what will make you happy, I support you. Thank you, son. That's all I ever wanted. Support, not control. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months later, in a simple ceremony at the City Hall. Dorothy insisted on something intimate, just for close family and a few friends. She sewed her own wedding dress, a discreet but elegant style in a light rose color. Walter bought a new suit and asked Richard to be his witness, a gesture of reconciliation that moved everyone. Dorothy chose Lucy as her maid of honor. "Grandma, you look beautiful," Lucy said on the wedding morning. "I feel beautiful, my granddaughter. I feel like a real bride. You are a real bride, and you're going to be very happy." The ceremony was moving. When the judge asked if Walter accepted Dorothy as his wife, he answered with a firm voice, "I do, and I promise to cherish each day God gives us together." When it was Dorothy's turn, she looked into Walter's eyes and said, "I do, and I promise that we will build the best chapter of our lives together." There was no big party, just a lunch at their home with family and some neighbors who had become friends. Dorothy cooked for days to prepare a special meal, and Walter organized the backyard with lights and flowers they had planted together. "Speech, speech," the guests shouted after lunch. Walter stood up and asked for silence. "I wanted to thank everyone here today, especially Dorothy's children, who learned to accept me as part of the family. And I wanted to say something about my wife." He paused, clearly emotional. "A few months ago, I was at the bottom of a crater, injured and giving up on life. Dorothy climbed down to get me, literally, but she didn't just save my life. She saved me from sadness, from abandonment, from the feeling that I was worthless." The guests listened in silence. "Today, at 58, I married a 72-year-old woman, and I can say I am living the best chapter of my life. Because age doesn't define who we are. What defines who we are is our capacity to love and be loved." The applause was warm. Dorothy stood up to hug her husband, and many of those present had tears in their eyes. "Now it's my turn," said Dorothy. "I want to thank everyone who is here, especially my children, who learned that a mother also has the right to be happy." She looked at Richard, Jennifer, and Stephen. "I love you. I always have, and I always will. But love cannot be a reason to erase who we are. For a long time I forgot that before being your mother, I was Dorothy, a woman with dreams, desires, and a right to happiness." She took Walter's hand. "Walter reminded me of who I am, and he gave me the courage to live as this person I had forgotten. At 72, I am starting my life over, and I have never been so happy." The months following the wedding were a time of adjustment and discovery. Dorothy and Walter learned to live as a couple, not just as mutual caregivers. They discovered shared interests they hadn't known about, like the pleasure of watching old movies cuddled on the sofa. Walter taught Dorothy how to drive. She had always wanted to learn, but never had the opportunity when she was young. Now, at 72, she was taking driving lessons with her husband in the backyard of their house. "Walter, I'm going to hit the pole," she said nervously, gripping the steering wheel of the old car he had fixed up for her to practice. "No, you won't. You have better reflexes than many young people out there. Just have confidence. If I can get my driver's license, I'll be the first woman my age in White Rock to drive. And I'll be proud to have such a modern wife." Dorothy got her license on the 3rd test. The emotion of receiving the document was immense, as if it were official proof that she was still capable of learning new things. "Now I can take you for a drive," she said to Walter. "Where do you want to go first?" "To the beach. I always wanted to see the ocean." The trip to the beach was the first big outing they took as a couple. Dorothy drove part of the way, proud of her new skill. When they reached the coast, she was silent for several minutes, just contemplating the vastness of the ocean. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she finally said. "And we can come as often as we want," replied Walter. "Now we have the time and freedom for it." They spent 3 days at the beach, staying in a simple inn. Dorothy collected seashells, walked on the sand, felt the seawater on her feet. Walter watched her, happy to see her fulfilling dreams she had held for decades. "Walter, thank you," she said on the last night of the trip. "For what?" "For helping me live again." for reminding me that there is still so much life ahead. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to start over. Back in White Rock, they found a surprise. Walter's workshop had gained new clients during their absence, and there was a waiting list for services. His reputation as an honest and competent mechanic was spreading to neighboring towns. "I think we're going to need to expand the workshop," said Walter, looking at the list of pending jobs. "Then let's expand," replied Dorothy. "We have enough savings for it." "Our savings," corrected Walter. "Now everything is ours." The workshop expansion brought new challenges and opportunities. Walter hired a young apprentice, Brandon, a 20-year-old who had left high school without prospects. Dorothy offered to teach the young man to read better and do math, skills he needed to work in the workshop. "Mrs. Dorothy, why are you wasting your time teaching me?" asked Brandon one afternoon during their studies. "I'm not wasting time. I'm investing in a person who has potential, but I'm just a poor boy who knows almost nothing. Brandon, I was also a poor girl who knew almost nothing. I had 3 children to raise alone, and I managed. You'll manage too, but not alone. Everyone needs someone who believes in them." Brandon became almost a son to Dorothy and Walter. He lived in a small house with his mother and 3 younger siblings, and often had dinner with the couple. Dorothy liked cooking for him and following his progress in his studies. "You know, Dorothy, we kind of adopted this boy," Walter commented one night. "And what's wrong with that? We have plenty of love to share." "Nothing wrong. I just think it's funny how our family keeps growing. First, it was just the 2 of us. Then your children accepted us. Now we have Brandon. And whoever else shows up needing affection," Dorothy completed. "Our home will always have an open door for anyone in need." 1 year after the wedding, Dorothy and Walter received an unexpected visit. It was Walter's grandson, Tyler, 10 years old, accompanied by his mother. "Dad, he begged so much to meet his grandfather that I decided to bring him," said Walter's daughter-in-law, clearly embarrassed. "Grandpa Walter," shouted Tyler, running into his grandfather's arms. Walter was too emotional to speak. It had been over 2 years since he'd seen his grandson. Dorothy watched the reunion with a smile, understanding the importance of that moment. "And you must be Grandma Dorothy," said Tyler, approaching her. "Dad said you saved my grandpa." "We saved each other, my dear," replied Dorothy. "Would you like to have lunch with us?" The visit lasted the rest of the day. Tyler was fascinated by his grandfather's workshop and Dorothy's vegetable garden. He helped Walter fix a piece and learned from Dorothy how to plant tomato seedlings. "Grandpa, can I come more often?" asked Tyler when it was time to leave. "Whenever your mother allows," replied Walter, looking hopefully at his daughter-in-law. "He can come during school vacations," she said, "if it's not too much trouble." "Trouble?" said Dorothy. "It will be a joy to have him here." Tyler's occasional presence brought a youthful energy to the house. Dorothy relived the pleasures of caring for a child, but now without the heavy worries and responsibilities of a mother. She could simply enjoy the boy's company and teach him new things. "Grandma Dorothy, how did you learn to make such delicious bread?" asked Tyler one morning, helping her in the kitchen. "By watching videos on the internet. It's never too late to learn new things." "You watch videos on the internet? That's so cool. Tyler, do you think because I'm old I can't learn new technology?" "No, Grandma. It's just that my other grandma says the internet is for young people. Your other grandma is mistaken. The internet is for anyone who is curious, regardless of age." Dorothy had become an active user of social media, where she shared photos of her garden, recipes she tried, and special moments with Walter. She had gained followers who were inspired by her story of starting over. "Walter, come see this," she said one afternoon, showing him her phone. "What is it?" "An 80-year-old lady from Texas sent me a message. She said our story inspired her to leave the house and look for new activities." "Really?" "Really. There are many people our age who need inspiration to live, not just to exist." Walter looked at the messages Dorothy received daily. "Maybe we should do something with this. Help other people who are going through the same situation we went through." "What kind of thing?" "I don't know, maybe a support group here in town. For older people who feel abandoned or useless." The idea began to take shape in their subsequent conversations. Dorothy and Walter decided to organize weekly meetings at their home for senior citizens who wanted to share experiences and learn new things. The first meeting had only 3 participants besides them: Mrs. Carroll, a 70-year-old widow who lived alone; Mr. Jack, a 65-year-old retiree who had been feeling depressed since he stopped working; and Mrs. Rose, 75, who had been rejected by her children in a way similar to Dorothy. "Folks, the idea here is simple," explained Dorothy. "We'll meet every Thursday to talk, exchange experiences, learn new things together. It's not therapy, it's not religion, it's just friendship and companionship." "And what exactly will we do?" asked Mrs. Carroll. "Whatever you feel like," Walter replied. "I can teach basic mechanics to anyone who wants to learn how to take care of their own car. Dorothy can teach sewing, cooking, gardening, and you all can teach what you know too," Dorothy added. "Everyone here has lived a lot and has knowledge to share." The meetings began to grow. By the 4th gathering, there were 10 people. By the 10th, there were 15. Dorothy and Walter had to reorganize the house to accommodate everyone, and the neighbors started lending chairs. "Dorothy, I think we've created something important," Walter said one night after an especially lively meeting. "We've created an extended family," she responded. "People who care about each other, who value one another, and who prove that age isn't an end, it's a new beginning." 2 years after the wedding, Dorothy received an unexpected call. It was Richard with surprising news. "Mom, Sandra and I are separating." Dorothy was silent for a few seconds. "I'm sorry, son. What happened?" "Several things, but one of the main ones was that she made me realize how poorly I treated you. She said if I was capable of being so insensitive to my own mother, I could be that way with anyone." "Richard, Mom, she was right. I was a terrible son, and I only realized it when I saw how you flourished away from us." "You weren't terrible, Richard. You were human. You made mistakes, like everyone." "Can I come there to talk to you in person?" "Of course you can. This house will always have a place for you." Richard's visit was different from all the previous ones. He arrived without his usual arrogance, clearly shaken by the separation and the reflections it had provoked. "Mom, I want to truly apologize," he said, sitting at the kitchen table where years earlier he had announced the plans to put her in a home. "Not just for what we said that day, but for a whole lifetime of not valuing you as I should have. Richard, you were very young when your father abandoned us. You had to grow up too fast, take on responsibilities that weren't yours. Maybe I put too much weight on your shoulders." "No, Mum. You did what you could with the resources you had. The problem is that I carried it as a burden, instead of seeing it as a demonstration of love." Walter, who was listening from the living room, approached. "Richard, can I say something?" "Of course. Your mother tells me every day how hard it was to raise you alone, but she never speaks of it as a complaint. She speaks with pride, with love. You were a good son. You just lost your way for a while." Richard looked at Walter with gratitude. "Thank you for taking such good care of her. We take care of each other. That's how healthy relationships work." From that conversation on, the relationship between Dorothy and Richard began to rebuild on more solid ground. He started visiting regularly, not out of obligation, but out of genuine pleasure in being with his mother. He participated in some meetings of the group she and Walter organized, and was impressed by the positive impact they were having on the community. "Mum, you've become a kind of community leader," he commented during a visit. "I've become a person who found her purpose," corrected Dorothy, "and I discovered that my purpose is to care for people and help them find the value they have. You've always been like that. We just didn't know how to appreciate it. Now you do, and that's what matters." On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Dorothy and Walter organized a party to celebrate not only the marriage, but also the progress of the support group they had created. More than 50 people attended, including children and grandchildren of the regular participants. "Everyone," said Walter during the party, "I want to thank everyone who has been part of this journey with us. 3 years ago, Dorothy and I were 2 lost and abandoned people. Today we are a large and happy family. A chosen family," added Dorothy, "based on mutual affection and respect for differences. Brandon, who was now 23, and had become a competent mechanic, asked to speak. "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter, I want to thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself. Today I managed to buy a small house for my mother and my siblings, and it all started with the opportunity you gave me." The applause was emotional. Dorothy had tears in her eyes. "Brandon, you always had potential, we just helped you see it." Tyler, now 13 and a regular visitor to the house, also wanted to speak. "Grandpa Walter, Grandma Dorothy, thank you for teaching me. That family isn't just who shares the same blood. It's who cares, who matters, who is present." Lucy, now 19 and a college student, gave the final speech of the night. "Grandma, when I was little you taught me to be brave, but it was only seeing you at 72 going down into a crater to save a stranger that I understood what real courage means. You inspired me to follow my dreams, even when they seem impossible." Dorothy looked around the party, seeing the smiling faces of the people who had become her extended family. She saw her children and grandchildren, saw Walter surrounded by the friends he had made at the workshop, saw the support group participants chatting animatedly among themselves. "Walter," she whispered to her husband, "I think we did it." "Did what?" "Turn our pain into purpose, our rejection into acceptance, our abandonment into belonging." Walter hugged her, and we turned our loneliness into a beautiful family. Months later, Dorothy and Walter received an honor from the White Rock City Hall for the social work they were developing. The mayor highlighted how the support group they created had reduced depression rates among the elderly in the city. "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter," said the mayor during the ceremony, "you've proven that age is a matter of attitude, not numbers, and you've proven that it's never too late to make a difference in other people's lives." "We just did what anyone would do," replied Dorothy, ever modest. "No, ma'am," said a lady from the audience. "You did what special people do. You turned your own difficulties into strength to help others." That night at home, Dorothy and Walter talked about the recognition they had received. "Who would have thought that desperate woman who went down into a crater would become an example for an entire city," said Walter. "And who would have thought that wounded man giving up on life would become one of the most respected mechanics in the region and a mentor for troubled youth? We proved there's no age to start over, and that there's no situation we can't rise from if we have determination and support." "Dorothy, can I make a confession?" "Of course." "I get sad thinking about all the time we lost before we met." Dorothy took his hand. "Walter, I don't see it that way. I think we went through everything we did to prepare for this moment, to be mature enough to build this solid love we have. Maybe, but even so, I wish I had more time ahead with you. Then let's make the most of each day, as if it were both the last and the first at the same time. The last so we don't waste it, the first so we never stop dreaming." 5 years after meeting in the crater, Dorothy and Walter had built a life neither of them imagined was possible. She, at 77, drove her own car, managed a small family business with her husband, maintained a support group that helped dozens of people, and had healthy relationships with her children and grandchildren. Walter, at 63, had rebuilt his professional self-esteem, reunited with the grandson he thought he had lost forever, mentored troubled youth, and found a mature and true love. "You know what's most incredible about our story?" asked Dorothy one afternoon, as they watered the vegetable garden that now filled their entire backyard. "What?" "That we started out trying to save each other from desperate situations, and we ended up saving many more people along the way. And we continue saving. Every Thursday we save someone from loneliness, from the feeling of uselessness, from abandonment. And they save us too. They save me from the temptation to get complacent, to stop growing." Walter stopped watering the plants and looked at Dorothy. "You know I love you more today than the day we got married." "I know, and do you know why? Because our love keeps growing. It wasn't love at first sight, it was love at first need. And it turned into love by choice, love by admiration, love by companionship. Love for a whole life built together. A life that no one can take from us anymore." That night, Dorothy wrote in her diary, a habit she had acquired in recent years. "Today marks 5 years since I descended into that crater thinking I was running away from life. In truth, I was running toward my real life. I found Walter, but more than that, I found myself again. I discovered that age is no limit for love, for growth, for social contribution. My children learned to respect me. My grandchildren learned that grandparents can be modern and adventurous. My community learned that older people have so much to offer. And I learned that it's never too late to be truly happy. If I could go back in time and change anything, I wouldn't change a thing. Every difficult moment brought me here. Every rejection strengthened me to value acceptance when it came. Every tear of sadness prepared me for tears of joy. Walter sleeps beside me, breathing peacefully. Tomorrow we'll wake up early to tend the garden, receive customers at the workshop, prepare for our group's weekly meeting. We'll live another day of the life we chose to build together. And we'll keep proving every day that the end can actually be the beginning, that a crater can be not a hole to get lost in, but a bridge to find yourself, that love has no age and life has no expiration date as long as we have the courage to live it fully. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we are just starting out, now continuing. 6 years after the meeting in the crater, the story of Dorothy and Walter had become legend in White Rock and neighboring towns. They received letters from people all over the country who were inspired by their journey. Some elderly couples came to visit them to see firsthand the work they were doing. One day they received a visit from a television crew that wanted to document their story for a national program about overcoming adversity. Mrs. Dorothy, what would you say to people your age who feel abandoned and without hope? Asked the reporter. I'd say that as long as we are alive, there is always the possibility of change. The problem is that often we wait for the change to come from outside, when in fact it has to start within us. And how does one start that internal change? First, by stopping feeling like a victim of circumstances. Second, by looking for ways to be useful, to contribute. Third, by not being afraid to step out of your comfort zone, even if it's scary at first, Walter added, and above all, by not accepting it when other people define what you can or cannot do based on your age. Age brings experience, wisdom. It's an asset, not a flaw. Do you have any future plans? Dorothy and Walter looked at each other and smiled. We're thinking of writing a book, said Dorothy, to tell our full story and the stories of the people we've met through our support group, and perhaps expanding our work to other cities, Walter added, to help create similar groups in other places. After the recording, Dorothy commented to Walter, I never thought our story would one day inspire so many people. It's because our story proves something a lot of people needed to hear, that there's no age limit to being happy, and that there's no situation we can't rise up from. The book they wrote was published 2 years later, and became an unexpected bestseller. From the Crater to the Sky, a story of starting over at 72, touched thousands of readers and generated invitations to speak all over the country. At the first talk they gave together, in a big city in the South, Dorothy was nervous. Walter, what if I don't know what to say to so many people? You'll speak the truth, your truth. That's what people want to hear. The auditorium was packed with people of all ages, but especially many seniors accompanied by their adult children. Folks, Dorothy began, I'm not a speaker, I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just a retired seamstress who one day made a desperate decision and ended up finding the best phase of her life. The audience laughed, immediately won over by her simplicity. I came here to tell you that it's never too late to start over, but starting over requires courage. Courage to face those who doubt us, courage to leave the familiar, courage to believe we deserve to be happy. A lady in the audience raised her hand. Mrs. Dorothy, my children want to put me in a retirement home. How did you find the courage to resist? First, by talking openly about why they think it's necessary. Sometimes children act out of fear, not malice. Second, by proving through actions that we are still capable. Third, if that still doesn't work, by making our own decisions about our lives. But what if we really do need care? Then we accept the care, but without giving up our dignity. A retirement home isn't a prison if it's our choice, made based on real needs, not on prejudices about age. Walter spoke up. The important thing is not to let others decide our lives based solely on our date of birth. Age is just a number. What matters is our ability, our will, our mental and physical health. After the talk, they were approached by dozens of people with similar stories. An 80-year-old lady said she had decided that day to come out of isolation and look for social activities. A 65-year-old man said he was going to reconcile with his son, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. "Walter," Dorothy said at the hotel that night, "I think our work is just beginning." "How so?" "So many people need to hear that they still have value, that they can still contribute, that they can still be happy. We need to keep spreading that message. So let's continue. We have our health. We have a story to tell. We have the desire to help. And we have each other to share this mission." The following years were filled with hard work and accomplishments. Dorothy and Walter traveled across the country giving talks, helping to create support groups similar to the one they had founded, and participating in television and radio programs. In every city they visited, they planted seeds of hope in people who had given up on dreaming. Through their own example, they proved that age could be synonymous with wisdom, experience, and the ability to contribute, not with being a burden or useless. At 80 years old, Dorothy still drove, still managed the workshop alongside Walter, and still coordinated the support group, which now had over 100 regular participants. Walter, at 68, had become a reference in mechanics in the region and a mentor to dozens of young people. "You know, Walter," said Dorothy one morning, having coffee at the kitchen table where they had begun to build their life together, "sometimes I think that crater was the best thing that ever happened to us." "Why?" "Because it was there that we lost the old versions of ourselves and found who we really were. The version our children couldn't see. The version we ourselves had forgotten existed. Dorothy, can I confess something?" "Always." "I'm not afraid of getting older anymore. Before I dreaded each passing year. Now I'm curious about what we'll still discover, build, accomplish. It's because we learned that aging isn't about losing. It's about gaining experience, wisdom, the freedom to be who we really are. And most of all, gaining time to do what really matters." That afternoon, they received a phone call that moved them deeply. It was a 90-year-old lady from Charleston who had read their book and wanted to thank them. "Ms. Dorothy, Mr. Walter, I want you to know that you saved my life," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "How so, ma'am?" "Mary, Miss Mary, I was preparing to give up on everything when my daughter gave me your book to read. I thought it was nonsense, but I started reading because she insisted. And what happened? I began to see that my story was similar to yours. Children who saw me as a burden, grandchildren who barely knew me, a life that seemed to be over." Dorothy was moved listening to the account. "And now, Ms. Mary, now I've gone back to studying. I'm taking a computer course for seniors. I started joining a reading group at the library. And believe it or not, I'm dating." Walter and Dorothy laughed with joy. "How wonderful, Ms. Mary. At 90 years old, can you believe it? Jack is 85, he's a widower too. We met in the computer course and discovered we have a lot in common." "And your children? How did they react?" "At first they were scandalized, but when they saw how much more cheerful and active I was, they started to support me. My daughter even said she hadn't seen me this happy in years." "Miss Mary, you are our hero," said Dorothy. "You prove our message is reaching where it needs to go. No, my dears, you are the heroes. You gave me back my life." After the call, Dorothy and Walter sat in silence for a few minutes, processing the emotion of knowing their story had impacted a stranger's life so profoundly. "Walter, how many people like How many people, Mary, are out there thinking their life is over?" "Many. But how many like Ms. Mary will discover there is still so much to live for?" "I hope many. And I hope our story continues to help people discover that." "It will continue, Dorothy. As long as we are alive, we will keep proving that age is not a limit for anything." As the years went by, Dorothy and Walter's home had become an informal pilgrimage site for people from all over the country. Letters, emails, and social media messages arrived from people thanking them for the inspiration they found in their story. Brandon, the young man they had taken in years before, was now the owner of his own auto shop and had married a girl from town. He and his wife were frequent visitors, always bringing news about their lives. "Mr. Walter, Mrs. Dorothy," said Brandon during a visit, "did you know my story has also become an example in town?" "How so?" "People talk about how you gave me a chance when I was just a boy with no prospects. They say I'm proof that it's worth investing in young people." "Brandon, you always had potential," said Dorothy. "We just created the conditions for it to show. But you created them because you believed in me, when even I didn't. And now I want to do the same. I'm thinking of hiring 2 apprentices for my shop." "What a beautiful idea," said Walter. "That way the cycle continues." Tyler, Walter's grandson, was now 18 and had decided to study mechanical engineering, inspired by his grandfather. He spent his vacations with his grandparents, learning not just about mechanics, but about life, relationships, and purpose. "Grandpa, Grandma Dorothy," he said one afternoon, "do you know you're famous at my school?" "Famous how?" asked Dorothy, laughing. "Everyone knows your story. My English teacher even used your book in a lesson on overcoming adversity." "That's a responsibility," commented Walter. "Being an example for young people. You're the best examples I know of how to really live life, not just go through life." Lucy, now a graduate in education, had specialized in adult and senior education, directly inspired by her grandparents' work. She often collaborated with the support group, bringing academic knowledge to complement Dorothy and Walter's practical wisdom. "Grandma, I'm developing a project at the university based on your work," she shared during a visit. "What kind of project?" "A reverse mentorship program where seniors teach college students about life experience and the young people teach the seniors about new technologies and current trends." "What a wonderful idea," said Walter. "It'll be a real exchange of knowledge." "Exactly, breaking the age barrier through mutual learning." Dorothy's children had also transformed over the years. Richard, after his separation, had gone to therapy and developed a much deeper understanding of family relationships. Jennifer and Stephen had matured their view on aging, especially after seeing their mother flourishing in her new life. "Mom," said Jennifer in a family conversation, "I want to apologize once more for everything we did years ago." "Jennifer, you've apologized many times. You don't need to anymore." "Yes, I do, because now I understand better what we did. It wasn't just a lack of consideration. It was ageism. We truly believed you were no longer capable of making decisions about your own life. And now I know you're more capable than many people half your age, and I know that when I reach your age, I want to be like you, independent, active, and determined." Stephen added, "Mom, you've become our model for how to age well, for how not to let age limit us. Children, you've learned the most important lesson, to respect the elderly not out of pity, but out of recognition of the value they have." Richard, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Mum, can I ask a question I've always wanted to ask but never had the courage?" "Of course." "Do you regret raising us alone? Of having dedicated so much to us and so little to herself?" Dorothy thought carefully before answering. "Richard, I don't regret raising you all alone. I regret having believed that after you grew up you would automatically understand the sacrifice that represented and would repay me. I should have taught you to value not only what I did for you, but who I was beyond being a mother." "How so?" "I should have kept my own interests, my own dreams, even while raising you. I shouldn't have erased myself completely for the sake of motherhood." Walter, who was listening to the conversation, added, "What your mother is saying is that parents are people too, and people need to maintain their individual identity to be better parents." "Exactly," agreed Dorothy. "When you discarded me as if I were just a retired mother, it was because I myself had forgotten I was much more than that." Jennifer was moved. "Mum, you made me realize I can't make the same mistake with my children. I can't erase myself as a person in the name of motherhood. And we can't forget that you are people beyond being our parents," said Richard. "People with the right to dreams, desires, life changes." "Now you understand," said Dorothy, smiling. "And this applies for when you reach my age too." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Dorothy and Walter organized a party that brought together over 200 people. It was impressive to see how their story had touched so many lives. During the party, they announced a new project, the creation of a foundation to support elderly people in situations of family abandonment. "Everyone," said Walter, "in recent years, we've met hundreds of people in the situation we lived 10 years ago. Competent and lucid elderly people being discarded by families who no longer know what to do with them. So we decided to create an institution that offers not only emotional support, but also practical opportunities for these seniors to rebuild their lives," completed Dorothy. "The Fresh Start Foundation will offer legal advice, psychological support, vocational courses adapted for seniors, and assisted living programs for those in need." The news was met with enthusiastic applause. Several people immediately offered themselves as volunteers or donors. "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter," said the city's mayor, present at the party, "you have transformed White Rock into the national capital of active aging. It's an honor for our city." "The work belongs to all of us," replied Dorothy. "We just started a movement that needs to grow." The foundation was created the following year and quickly became a national reference. Dorothy and Walter, now 82 and 73 respectively, shared the administration with a team of professionals and volunteers. "Dorothy," said Walter one morning, while reviewing the Foundation's monthly reports, "do you realize we're running an institution that helps hundreds of people a month?" "I do. And I also realize that this doesn't tire me, it energizes me." "Why do you think that is?" "Because it's our purpose. We found the reason we lived everything we lived. To get here? To get here and help others get here too." One day they received a visit from a university researcher who was writing a thesis on active aging in the United States and wanted to study their case. "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter, in your opinion, what is the secret to aging well?" "Not accepting that age is synonymous with limitation," replied Walter, "and staying useful, productive, connected with other people," added Dorothy. "But how do you convince the elderly that this is possible?" "Through example," said Dorothy. "Every elderly person who lives actively inspires others to do the same." "And through social change," added Walter. "Society needs to stop seeing the elderly as burdens and start seeing them as resources." "What kind of resources?" "Experience, wisdom, time available for volunteering, knowledge accumulated over a lifetime," listed Dorothy. "A healthy elderly person is a living library." "And what would you say to families who are considering placing elderly relatives in a home?" Walter and Dorothy exchanged a look, remembering their own experience. "Talk honestly about the real needs," said Walter. "Often, what seems like a need for placement is actually a lack of patience or understanding. And remember that caring doesn't mean controlling," added Dorothy. "You can care for an elderly person's safety without taking away their autonomy and dignity. And if placement really is necessary, then do it with love, not as disposal," said Dorothy. "Choose a place that treats the elderly as a person, not as a patient, and stay present in their life." The researcher was impressed by the two's clarity and energy. "You are living proof that age can be synonymous with vitality. We are proof that when you find purpose, age becomes irrelevant," replied Dorothy. At 85, Dorothy still drove, still cooked for dozens of people at the weekly meetings, still traveled the country giving lectures. Walter, at 76, still fixed cars, still mentored young people, still planted and harvested the garden that had become a small orchard. "Dorothy, have you ever thought about slowing down?" asked Jennifer on a visit. "Why am I feeling bad?" "No, Mom. You have an energy that people half your age envy. It's just, well, you've already done so much. Maybe it's time to rest a little." "Jennifer, rest isn't about being still. Rest is doing what you love. And I love everything I do." Walter laughed. "Your mother will only stop when she can't move anymore. And the way she takes care of her health, that might take a long time yet." "And you, Walter?" asked Richard. "Don't you think about retiring from the shop?" "Retirement isn't about age, it's about desire. As long as I have the desire and the ability to work, I'll work." "But what if something happens to you? What if one of you gets sick?" Dorothy and Walter exchanged a look, a conversation they'd had in private many times. "Then we take care of each other," said Dorothy simply. "That's what couples are for. And if you both get sick at the same time, then you help us," said Walter. "But you help us while respecting our wishes, our choices about how we want to live. The important thing is that you understand we are not a problem to be solved," said Dorothy. "We are people to be respected." That night, alone at home, Dorothy and Walter talked about their children's concern. "Walter, do you think we're being too stubborn?" "I think we're being true to ourselves. It's different." "But what if they're right? What if we're pushing too hard? Dorothy, do you feel forced doing what you do?" "No, I feel fulfilled." "And so do I. So we're not forcing anything. We're living. But when the time comes that we really need help, then we'll accept help, but we'll do it while maintaining our dignity and our active voice in decisions." "Do you promise that if I become incapacitated, you won't let anyone treat me like a child?" "I promise." "And do you promise the same for me?" "I promise." 2 years later, Walter had a minor heart attack. Dorothy, now 87, cared for him during his recovery with the same dedication he had cared for her years before, when she broke her wrist in a fall. "Dorothy, are you sure you can take care of me alone?" asked Walter from the hospital. "Walter, you went down into a crater to find me when I was lost. Now it's my turn to bring you back." "But I'm fine. It was just a scare." "And you'll stay fine because I'll make sure of it." During the weeks of recovery, Dorothy's children offered to hire nurses or take Walter to a specialized clinic. "No need," said Dorothy firmly. "I'll take care of him." "Mum, you're not so young yourself anymore." "Richard, I raised 3 children alone when I was young and broke. Now I'll take care of a grown man being older but with resources and experience. Which situation do you think is harder?" Richard didn't know how to respond. "But Mum, if you need anything—" "I'll ask, as I've always done when I really needed to." Walter's recovery was faster than the doctors expected, largely due to Dorothy's attentive care and their shared motivation to return to the active life they led. "Doctor," said Walter at the follow-up appointment, "my wife was better than any professional nurse." "Does she have medical care experience?" asked the cardiologist. "She has experience in caring for people with love," replied Dorothy. "It's different." "And it's more effective," agreed the doctor. "Mr. Walter, your tests are excellent. You can return to normal activities, but in moderation." "What is moderation for people our age?" asked Walter. "What your bodies can handle comfortably. You know your limits better than I do." Back to normal life, Walter and Dorothy made small adjustments to their routine. They slightly slowed their work pace, began delegating more responsibilities at the foundation, but kept all the activities that gave them pleasure. "You know, Dorothy," said Walter one afternoon, resting in the hammock they had set up in the backyard, "that scare made me value each day we have together even more." "Me too. But it didn't make me want to live less intensely. It made me want to enjoy it even more. That's what I mean. Every day is a gift, but a gift to be opened and used, not stored in a drawer." "Walter, can I ask a question that might sound strange?" "Of course." "Are you afraid of dying?" Walter thought before answering. "I'm afraid of dying before you because I know how hard it is to be alone. I'm afraid of dying leaving things unfinished, but I'm not afraid of death itself." "Why?" "Because I've lived. Truly. Especially these last 15 years with you. When my time comes, I'll be able to say I made the most of it." "I feel the same way." "And you know what else? I feel our story will continue even after we're no longer here." "How so?" "Through the people we inspire, the projects we've created, the changes we've sparked in how society sees the elderly, our legacy won't be material. It will be transformational." At 90, Dorothy received a national honor as Senior of the Year at an awards ceremony promoted by the Department of Health. Walter, at 81, proudly accompanied her to the ceremony in Washington, D.C. "Mrs. Dorothy," said the secretary during the award presentation, "you have become a national symbol of active and successful aging." "Mr. Secretary, I'm not a symbol of anything. I'm just a woman who refused to accept That age is synonymous with uselessness. And what would you say to other seniors who feel undervalued? I would say that value isn't something others give us. It's something we recognize in ourselves and make a point of demonstrating. And to the families of these seniors, I would say, see your parents and grandparents as complete people, not as deteriorated versions of what they once were. See what they still can be, not just what they no longer are. The National Award brought even more visibility to their work. They received invitations to participate in international conferences on aging. Their books were translated into other languages, and the foundation they created became a model for similar initiatives in other countries. "Dorothy," said Walter one morning, reading emails on the computer they had learned to use at 80, "an invitation has arrived for us to give a lecture in France." "In France? About what?" "About our experience with active aging. They want to know our working model." "Do you want to go?" "I do." "Do you want to?" "I do. I've always wanted to see Paris." "Then let's go. At 90 and 81 years old, we're going to be international speakers." The trip to France was a milestone in their lives. They were received as academic celebrities, their lectures filled auditoriums, and they met researchers and activists from all over the world who worked on issues related to aging. "Walter," said Dorothy one afternoon in Paris, sitting at a cafe on Fifth Avenue, "can you believe we're here?" "I can, and I believe we deserve to be here." How did two people who 20 years ago were considered disposable get here? By proving they weren't disposable, proving they had a lot to offer, and inspiring other people to prove the same thing. "Dorothy, do you realize our story changed not only our lives but the lives of thousands of people?" "I do. And I realize it happened because we didn't accept the label they wanted to put on us. The label of useless old people." "Exactly. We refused to wear that label and created our own labels. Active seniors, experienced mentors, examples of resilience, and most importantly, people passionate about life." Back in the United States, Dorothy and Walter continued their work with renewed energy. The international trip had given them a global perspective on issues they faced locally. "You know, Walter," said Dorothy at a support group meeting, "we discovered in Paris that the abandonment of the elderly is a worldwide problem, not just an American one. And we also discovered that our solution can be applied anywhere," added Walter. "What solution?" asked one of the participants. "Refusing to accept that age is a limitation," said Dorothy. "Seeking purpose, staying active, valuing one's own experience, not depending on external validation to feel useful. And most importantly," added Walter, "understanding that aging can be growth, not just deterioration." A young gerontology student who was visiting the group asked, "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter, what would be the most important advice you would give to someone entering their senior years?" Dorothy and Walter looked at each other, a question they had answered hundreds of times, but which remained important. "Prepare for this stage of life," said Dorothy. "Don't wait to think about aging only when it arrives. Take care of your health, maintain friendships, develop hobbies, cultivate interests that don't depend on your profession. And most importantly," Walter added, "don't accept social prejudices about age. You can be active, productive, creative, and happy at 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, as long as you want to, and take care of yourself for it. But when physical limitations really do come, then you adapt," said Dorothy. "But adapting isn't giving up. It's finding new ways to do what you've always done. And remember that physical limitation is not mental or emotional limitation," added Walter. "You may have difficulty walking and still be useful, productive, capable of contributing." At 92 years old, Dorothy began using a cane again, not due to injury, but for greater safety while walking. Walter, at 83, had cut back on work at the shop, but still took on special clients and continued mentoring young mechanics. "Dorothy, does the cane bother you?" Walter asked one morning. "Why would it bother me?" "Because it was a cane you held when you went down into that crater for the first time. It might bring back bad memories." Dorothy looked at the cane and laughed. "Walter, that cane brought me to you. This cane keeps me safe so I can stay with you. Both are instruments of life, not limitation. What a beautiful way to see it. I learned from you to see assistive tools as allies, not as symbols of weakness. And I learned from you that strength isn't about not needing help. Strength is knowing how to ask for help when you need it. That year they decided to take one last big trip together. They wanted to see New England, a region that had always sparked their curiosity. Walter, do you think we can travel on our own at our age? Dorothy, we can do anything we want to do. We just need to plan properly. Then let's plan. The trip through New England lasted 3 weeks and was an unforgettable adventure. They discovered paradise beaches, historic towns, welcoming people. In every place they were recognized by someone who had read their book or attended their talks. "Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Walter," shouted a lady on a beach in Miami Beach. "You are my idols." "Idols, why, my dear?" asked Dorothy. "For proving that life doesn't end at 60. I'm 75, and I'm here alone enjoying the beach because you inspired me to travel solo." "How wonderful," said Walter. "And are you enjoying it?" "I'm loving it. My children thought I was crazy, but I told them if you can travel the world in your 90s, I can travel the United States at 75. Encounters like this happened almost daily during the trip. Dorothy and Walter realized how their story had spread and touched people across the country. "Walter," Dorothy said one night in Atlanta, "I think our mission is accomplished." "How so?" "We wanted to prove that the elderly still have value. We wanted to show that it's possible to start over after 70. We wanted to inspire others not to give up on themselves. And we did. We did. Now we can relax and enjoy each other without feeling we need to prove anything to anyone. Does that mean we'll stop giving talks? Not necessarily, but we'll do it for pleasure, not out of a sense of mission. The mission is already complete." Back in White Rock after the trip, they found the foundation running perfectly under the management of competent professionals and dedicated volunteers. The support group had become a respected institution in the city, with a waiting list of people wanting to join. "You know, Dorothy," Walter said, watching a group meeting, "we created something that will continue to exist even when we're no longer here. It's our greatest achievement. We didn't just change our own lives, we changed other people's lives and started a movement for transformation. And it all started with a desperate climb down into a crater. A climb down that was actually a climb up, a climb back to life." At 93, Dorothy published one last book, Letters to a Granddaughter, a collection of reflections on aging, family, purpose, and happiness, written as letters to Lucy, but aimed at all generations. "Grandma, why did you decide to write this book?" Lucy asked during the launch. "Because I want to put down in writing everything I've learned all these years. For you, for your children when you have them, for anyone who wants to understand that growing old can be a beautiful adventure." What is the main message of the book? That age is just a number, but wisdom is a treasure. That each year lived adds value to a person. It doesn't subtract. That it's possible to be young in spirit at 90 and old in spirit at 40. Walter, sitting beside her at the launch, added, "And that love has no age. That true companionship can begin at 70, 80, 90 years old. That it's never too late to be happy." The book became another editorial success and was adopted in gerontology courses at several universities as a case study on successful aging. 1 year later, Walter began to show signs of mild dementia. Dorothy, now 94, decided to care for him at home, adapting both of their routines to the new needs. "Dorothy," said Richard in a private conversation, "are you sure you can take care of Walter by yourself? I can manage it. The question is whether you'll support me in this or try to convince me otherwise. Mum, we're just worried about your health too." "Richard, I raised 3 small children by myself. I cared for dozens of people through our support group. I cared for Walter when he had the heart attack. Now I'll care for him through the dementia. It's what people who love each other do for one another. But if it gets too hard, I'll ask for help, as I've always done." "All right, Mum, but please don't hesitate to come to us." "I won't hesitate, but I also won't give up on him prematurely." Caring for Walter with dementia brought new challenges for Dorothy, but it also revealed even deeper aspects of the love they shared. Even when he didn't remember some details, he continued to treat her with affection and respect. "Walter," she said one morning when he was confused about where he was. "You may not remember everything, but I remember for both of us." "Dorothy, are you my wife?" "I am, for 15 years, and I'll keep on being until the last day." "You are very beautiful and very kind to me, and you are very special to me, Walter, even when you don't remember that." In moments of lucidity, Walter showed full awareness of his condition. "Dorothy, thank you for not giving up on me." "Walter, you didn't give up on me when I was emotionally broken in that crater. Why would I give up on you now?" "Because it's harder, because I'm not the person I was anymore. You are still the person I love, you just need more care. Love isn't only for the easy days." "And if I get worse? What if I can't recognize you anymore?" "Then I'll remind you every day who you are to me, and I'll love you even if you don't remember to love me back." Walter began to cry. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "We both got lucky, Walter. The luck of finding true love when we already thought it was too late." As Walter's dementia progressed, Dorothy developed creative strategies to keep him comfortable and connected to reality. She created photo albums with explanatory captions, maintained comforting routines, and continued to involve him in activities he could still manage. "Mrs. Dorothy," said the geriatric doctor during a consultation, "I rarely see caregivers as dedicated and competent as you." "I'm not a caregiver, doctor, I'm a wife. But you are doing a professional level of care work. I'm doing a work of love. It's different." "And is it being difficult?" "It's being different, but not harder than any other challenge life has presented us." The community that Dorothy and Walter had created over the years mobilized to support them. Members of the support group took turns keeping Walter company when Dorothy needed to go out. Brandon and other young people they had mentored offered to help with household tasks. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Brandon one afternoon, "I want to give back a little for everything you and your Walter have done for me." "Brandon, you owe us nothing. We owe you our life examples. You taught me that there are no disposable people. Now I want to help take care of the person who taught me that. Thank you, my son. But taking care of Walter is my responsibility and my privilege. But you'll accept help, so you can take better care of him, right?" Dorothy smiled. "Yes, I accept, as long as it's clear that the decisions about his care remain mine." "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. We are just support, not a replacement." The support network that formed around Dorothy and Walter became an example of how communities can care for their most vulnerable members without taking away their dignity or autonomy. In one of the last interviews they gave together, when Walter still had moments of lucidity, a journalist asked about the legacy they wanted to leave. "We want to leave proof that age is not an end, it's a transformation," said Dorothy. Walter, with some difficulty but with conviction, added, "And that true love has no expiration date." What would you say to young couples who are starting their lives together? "That they build a solid foundation of mutual respect and admiration," answered Dorothy, "because that is what sustains a relationship when everything else changes, and that they never stop dreaming together," added Walter. "That they make plans for when they're 60, 70, 80 years old, that they see aging as a journey to take together, not as a problem to be avoided." 2 years later, Walter passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by Dorothy, her children whom he had learned to consider his own, and the friends who had become chosen family. Dorothy, now 96, held his hand until the last moment. "Walter," she whispered, "thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to love and be loved. Thank you for saving me in the crater and letting me save you too." Walter's funeral brought together hundreds of people of all ages, a testament to the impact his life had caused. Dorothy, despite the pain of loss, spoke at the ceremony. "Walter always said that we saved each other in that crater 20 years ago. Today I understand that we didn't just save each other. We saved the idea that it's possible to start over, that it's possible to be happy, that it's possible to contribute, regardless of age." He taught me that widowhood doesn't have to be synonymous with loneliness if we've built a solid network of relationships. He taught me that true love doesn't end with death. It transforms into gratitude and precious memories. And he taught me that even at the time of farewell, we can be at peace if we lived with purpose and intensity. In the months following Walter's death, Dorothy faced the challenge of redefining her life as a widow at 96, but the solid foundation of relationships and activities she had built sustained her. "Grandma," said Lucy during a visit, "how are you dealing with the longing?" "With gratitude, my granddaughter. I miss him, but mostly I feel gratitude for having had 20 wonderful years with Walter. Many people don't even have 20 days of true love in their life." "You don't feel alone." "Alone? No. Walter taught me the difference between being by myself and being alone. I am by myself physically, but I am surrounded by people who love me and whom I love." "And plans for the future?" "To keep living each day with intensity, to keep taking care of people, to keep learning new things, to keep proving that age is not a limitation." Dorothy continued to participate actively in the foundation they created, kept the weekly support group meetings, and began writing one last book, the memoirs of Walter and the lesson of love he taught her. "Why did you decide to write about Walter?" asked a friend. "Because his story deserves to be told, because he was much more than a man I saved in a crater. He was proof that people can completely transform when they find purpose and love. And also because I want other people to know that it's possible to find the love of your life at 72 if you're willing to open yourself to that possibility." The book, Walter, A Love Without Age, became an unexpected bestseller and was adapted into a film, spreading the message even further that love and purpose have no expiration date. At 98, Dorothy received an honorary doctorate from one of the country's leading universities, recognition for her contribution to changing paradigms about aging in the United States. "Mrs. Dorothy," said the dean during the ceremony, "you have become living proof that wisdom and experience are national treasures that must be valued." "Dean," she replied, her voice still firm, "I am not a national treasure. I am just a woman who refused to accept that her life was over when others decided it was. And what message would you leave for future generations? That they take good care of their elders, because one day they will be elders too. That they see aging as an opportunity for growth, not just decline. And that they always remember a person is worth what they are, not the age they have." That night, at home, Dorothy reflected on the extraordinary journey her life had become since that desperate day in the crater. "Walter," she said, looking at his photo on the nightstand, "who would have thought that two rejected and abandoned people would become symbols of hope for so many others? Today, at 98, I still wake up every day wanting to live, to learn, to contribute. I still have projects, I still have dreams, I still have love to give. Thank you for teaching me that the end can be the beginning, that a crater can be a bridge, that it's never too late to be happy. And thank you for leaving me a life so full of meaning that even your absence cannot empty it." On her 100th birthday, Dorothy organized a big party that brought together 5 generations: children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even some great-great-grandchildren. The celebration took place where it all began, next to the old crater, which had been turned into a memorial garden in honor of her and Walter. "Everyone," she said during the party, her voice still clear at 100, "I want to thank everyone who has been part of this extraordinary journey. 30 years ago, I was a rejected woman who believed her life was over. Today, I am a centenarian woman, surrounded by love and proud of every day I have lived. I learned that age is just the number of years we've had to accumulate experience and wisdom. I learned that it's never too late to start over, to love, to contribute, to be happy. And I learned that the secret to a full life is not living many years, but living each year with intensity, purpose, and love." The party was broadcast live on social media and watched by thousands of people who had followed Dorothy's journey. Messages of affection came from all over the world, from people who had been inspired by her story. "Grandma," said Lucy during the party, "what is your greatest wish now?" Dorothy looked around, seeing the smiling faces of the people she loved, feeling the positive energy she had created over the years. "My greatest wish, my granddaughter, is that our story continues to inspire people long after I am gone, that other people discover that age is not a limitation, it's an opportunity, that other people find the courage to start over when everything seems lost." And above all, may others learn that life is always an adventure in progress, never a movie that's already over. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story of overcoming and love without age. Dorothy and Walter proved that it's never too late to start over, and that true love can blossom at any time in life. Leave a comment about which part moved you the most, and if you know any similar stories of people who found happiness in their golden years. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one.